be access to content that is native to online teaching, so that it is a better support for students and teachers and not a rendering of something that was traditionally done in person. Finally, the foundational piece to all of this is at the bottom, which is that you can see that we are going to work with students, families, teachers as having access to quality instruction. You'll see the list there of accommodations that we will be taking into consideration and supporting. I know that our ITS division is also working on technological access. So those things all still remain true because in a remote setting, we will need to engage that for both learning models. Okay. So the next question that we get, that this would lead us to is, then what is the difference between remote learning and the online model? So as I referred to earlier when I began, remote learning really speaks to that setting, the environment where we find ourselves, having to be at a stay-at-home order, and schools closed because of the public health guidelines. But we can still guarantee instructional continuity for students. So we would consider everyone in the hybrid model as being remote hybrid at this point in time if we are able to proceed with a remote learning environment at the start of the school year. The online model speaks to the alternative to having to return in person at any time. It means that you will persist in this online setting for the duration of the school year. It is intended, like I said, for the school year, but of course, individual needs will be taken into consideration. But we do have a recommendation that occurs at natural breaks in the school year, such as the semester. Again, we really want to create a stable environment for students in very unstable times, and so that's why we are putting forth such distinctions in the programs. Finally, I wanted to share with you a sample schedule. We watermark this because, again, this is not what we are putting out for all programs and models. We do still need to have the structures for hybrid confirmed, and I believe that is happening at the next board meeting. And we need the schedules for both models, hybrid and online, across each grade span. But I wanted to give you a sample of what this would look like, because one of the biggest concerns that both teachers and students had were sort of the unstructured time that happened in the emergency remote spring. Moving into this school year, we've had more preparation time. We've had lots of lessons learned, and two of our biggest driving factors has been, how do we help students be successful? How do we help teachers be successful? I would not, an understatement to say that our teachers and our students have taken on a huge load of learning and how to be in this setting. And so as many structures and as many tools and resources as we can provide is what we would encourage. So the schedule here would show that we have an increased amount of live synchronous time. You'll see that in the sections. In the blue as well, that is learning time that is noted, but for the specials, for the arts, for even clubs, that's not on the schedule, but it can be incorporated. So we did block out, if you'll notice, that Monday, which in the proposal that you saw back in June, that day is reserved for a significant amount of planning and professional development that will be required. But there will be some live learning happening on that day. I understand each of those proposals. So we will just make sure that schedules that work for each grade span and for each model will be provided, so that families as well as teachers have some stability and assurance of what is able to happen. All right, I think that is the end of that presentation, so I will hand it back to Dr.
Blanco. We're ready for questions.
Mr. Cahill.
Who would like to go first?
I heard Elizabeth.
All right, Elizabeth, fire away.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. One of the emails we received talked about a separate school remote option in which students would not enroll at their regular school, but would be in some kind of other option. It's like a pool of learning in some way. Is that something that you are considering?
So at our last presentation, Chief Jamel talked about the online school and the vision the district has for an online school, but we were planning to use this year to plan and open up that option in 21, 22. We were offering similar kind of like a test of the option at individual schools. And I think even the initial conversation brought up a lot of concerns from the community about losing their space at a school. What if they didn't really, like that model? If they tried it, would they be able to return? So we decided to go with a softer rollout pilot, still be able to offer the option of online with a specialized curriculum, but students would remain enrolled in their school. And Chief Jamel might want to add additional comments.
Oh, well, so, sorry about my phone ringing. Let's see. But you are contemplating that for the coming year, there will be some students who are not in any school. They are just floating in some kind of general remote instruction.
No, they will be enrolled in their own school. Go ahead, TJ, sorry.
No, I was going to say you pretty much said it all already. The students would still be enrolled in their home school currently. For the ones that do attend the 100% online program, they would just be attending a different program, but under their same titled school this year.
Oh, I see. Well, I think I see. And then my other question, why is it necessary to have a full year commitment if we do go to all online and not opening our campuses? Why do we not have the option to, in mid-year, go back to a hybrid model?
So the design for an online school is really, sometimes a specialized student that needs that kind of schooling, almost like independent study, CIS. And it's something Dr. McDonald has had a vision for a long time, maybe to capture some homeschool parents and special circumstances. So as we started working on it, we realized that if we allowed people to jump back and forth, that we wouldn't be able to predict our staffing. So if our teachers were hired to be or committed to being online only, and then a great number of the students wanted to come back to be in person, that it would be difficult to staff. But there will be, of course, exceptions made. Every rule has an exception based on individual student and family needs. But we would like that commitment so we could have a true pilot and see how it works.
Well, actually, I'm not talking about the pilot. I'm talking about the whole rank and file of all of our students. If we vote that the campuses will not open, does that mean that they can never open anytime during the year?
Oh, no, we're asking you this evening to have permission to be able to go into the hybrid or full in-person operation to give us the flexibility when the health conditions permit. So, for instance, we're asking the families, which their choice may change now, to make a choice to be hybrid or to be online so we can plan staffing accordingly. But everybody is beginning online because of the health and safety conditions. But if somebody says, I want to be a hybrid, like Mrs. Hill said that she would like her children to come hybrid, when we're able to open, then her children would come to school. The parents who selected online, then they would remain online. So, we have to have some idea of what families are choosing, because we base staffing in our purchases of materials and, space in the classrooms upon their choices.
Dr. Pomeroy.
Oh, yes, just one more question, so I'll be sure to understand. I heard that with one family or member of the family, a parent, didn't want to choose that, yes, they would accept having the online version this year, because if so, then when campuses reopened, they wouldn't be able to go. But that was a misunderstanding, is it not? Because our campuses either will be open or they won't be open. Is that right?
They will be open, but we're trying to plan for both choices, because we did have some families in our first survey say that they didn't want to return for health and safety reasons. So we're trying to give them a choice so we can meet the needs of, all of the families. But then there is staffing and planning involved. So we're hoping and encouraging that if you select the online, that you would stay with it for the year. Now, with that said, there is exceptions, right? There might be a reason why somebody needs to come back to hybrid. So I don't want to say it's a hard and fast rule, but there's a lot of planning that goes involved in both models and staffing choices. So we're hoping that, everybody's going to be at home right now because of health and safety. So the hybrid group, what they're saying is we want to come back when we're able to come back. And the online group is saying, for this year, I want to stay online for whatever reason, personal reason they have.
I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Phelps, you're unmuted. You want to go next?
Sure. I just want to say that I'm still impressed with the team and the thoughtfulness. And I do trust the team. I want to say that explicitly, to plan and adapt and communicate with the board. And one of the reasons, Mr. President, why we do public comment first, of course, is to incorporate, as board members, we're sort of the buffer, to incorporate the public comments into our questions. So I will attempt to do so. I don't agree with the public comment that, and my colleagues on the board know this already, it's not a surprise, that planning should be done in public and communicated at all steps at every step of the planning to the public. I don't think that's workable or viable or a good idea. I do trust the staff. I think the plans have been very thoughtful. I'm very impressed in both this meeting and the previous meetings. So I want to say that out at the outset. There was a comment about other districts are opening in hybrid and adjacent, I think it said, I'm not sure. Anyway, there was a comment adjacent or other nearby or something, other districts are opening in hybrid. And I just want to point out that we all received, not for public comment, but the board received a letter from our union, our teachers union president, Dr. Allison Steps, but it was signed not just by her, but by the La Cañada Teachers Association president, the Glendora Teachers Association president, the Alhambra Teachers Association president, the Glendale Teachers Association president, the San Marino Teachers Association president, the Hacienda La Puente Teachers Association president, the Mountain View Teachers Association president, the South Pasadena Teachers Association president, the Garvey Education Association president, the Duarte Unified Education Association president, the Azusa Education Association president, the Arcadia Teachers Association president, and the Temple City Education Association president. I don't know how many that was, but all of those people and the teachers they represent would like us to open in the manner requested today by the superintendent. So, and of course, it's well known that Los Angeles Unified and San Diego, big ones, and sure, there might be one somewhere, and certainly Orange County is another universe, maybe is a good word. But we know that. And I just want to read a passage from the letter from these union presidents. It's just one sentence. With the steadily increasing COVID-19 cases in the last 30 days, our members are anxious and fearful for the welfare of the children, for themselves, and for their loved ones. And I'm reading that because I feel that is the reason we are here today. Okay. I can, quibble about the science and talk about, which Dr. Reynoso pointed out previously that you guys have looked around the world actually at, right, other models, and how I'm aware of how countries were able to open. They didn't necessarily call them cohorts. Some of them called them capsules or little groups of students, successfully without increasing the spread. But that was when the community transmission level was quite low. And I think that, as I was talking to Dr. Pomeroy the other day, right, I think that's an important distinction. We don't have a low transmission rate, as far as I read, right? So I think that's why we're here today. The question that this is to see if I understand what staff is saying. There are some commenters that want more specific, measurable parameters, criteria, Dr. McDonald and Dr. Blanco. You heard those? Some of them even knew that the county said 5%, right? And so my response, I guess I would say, our newly crowned health director, Ms. Apodaca, and this excellent team would be in touch with the county and would make the decision based on the advice of the experts, as they've always done. And I think that statement is, some of these statements are underlying them saying we don't trust the district. Well, I disagree. I haven't seen any evidence that I can't trust this team. And I am a buffer between the community and you all in my role. So I want to be clear, Brian, sorry, Dr. McDonald, Mr. Superintendent. And I'm glad that Dr. Pomeroy brought this out of the comments. What we are being asked to approve, and I'll read it from the board report, is it is proposed that both models are approved, the models that you've just heard, and staff is given the flexibility to decide when it is appropriate for each model to be in operation. At the start of the 2021 school year, both models will operate in a remote setting. A phased timeline for any transitions back to a full in-person or the hybrid model will be communicated to the community in advance. I understand that some people want to know when that is. I'm okay with you all talking with the health experts and communicating with us, right? As Brian and his team are very collaborative, as you can see with us. But I want to be clear, Mr. Superintendent and Chief Academic Officer. So you're asking that both models be approved and you have the flexibility, right, to tell us when you're going to implement, I guess, hybrid, right? Implement hybrid in an in-person setting and continue, sorry, I'm going to get the words wrong, Helen, continue online learning with the people who are not comfortable, right, returning. Is that true, Dr. McDonald? You like that approval today?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Phelps.
So in this way, it's a little bit, Mr. President, I see this as a little bit like what you have thought about preparing, right? Some delineated delineation of authority, right? Because he's saying specifically what he wants,
Correct.
right? Okay. So now my question for the Chief of Human Resources, Dr. Miller, and Helen, and I think they know what's coming. I heard the praises, and I consistently hear the praises from you all about the people that adapted, both teachers and others, during the spring. Unfortunately, I also heard from parents who were not satisfied with the level, let's say, of engagement from their child's teacher. So included in your presentation is daily direct instruction, I believe. So I'm wondering how that's monitored, Dr. Miller, whether there's some need to have an agreement with the teachers, whether the principal is going to monitor it, I don't know. And then my other question, sir, which is about this AB 77 requirement for a weekly engagement record for each student. So I know you're in the process of figuring it out, but I wonder how that would be implemented. So those are my questions.
No, Dr. Miller was having some technology problems because he had texted me earlier. So I think he was trying to get back in by phone. But what I will say is that Canvas gives us the ability to do exactly what you're asking for. And we will have to have conversations with our labor partners about what that means. I think I will also go back to the root cause of some of the reasons people may not have been able to engage was their own internet access. Even when some teachers tried to purchase internet access, the companies wouldn't come out and install it, right? And they had to wait. There were, some areas that don't have as good of access. So I think, we really gave people the benefit of the doubt and that's still our approach. But there are going to be, higher and greater expectations from the community. And I think we all realize that and we want to rise to the occasion, right? I think every teacher wants to do the best job they possibly can. So a lot of those issues have been worked through. And the materials that we had or have were not designed to be 100% online materials. We've kind of approached that and have some new materials coming in. And we have professional development to help instructors be better online instructors that's going to occur for every teacher. So with all of those things in place, I think people have a greater chance of, being successful if they were not successful in the spring. And that there's many reasons why students could not engage and not every teacher could engage at the same level. So I think you'll see a big difference. Mrs. Hill, you could add, or Dr. Reynoso, if you like.
Scott, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Oh, you said
Yes. Yes, I can.
Okay, I apologize for that. Technical as Dr. Exactly what Dr. regarding the way that we're doing the online program that we've been having, and that's a conversation that will be part of the next round of negotiations. And some of those concerns will be brought up there, and then how do we address that? Secondly, in terms of how we are going to track attendance and, more importantly, student engagement, as I had a conversation with Mr. Jamal just before we came on to this meeting, we can track that through Canvas. However, reporting has to be done through Aries. And as you had said, we're currently still working that piece out. And so, as you had also said earlier, more than likely that will require right now a physical transfer of information or manual transfer of information from Canvas to Aries until we may be able to find a patch. But I would leave that to Mr. Jamal to answer.
I would also, good afternoon, everybody. Happy summer.
Hey,
So
was
thank
there 3 kids on your icon?
those are my 3 kids. Yeah, they're just not their faces. They're holding hands because they're happy.
That was beautiful. Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah. No, we're keeping it real over here in the Reynosa
Okay.
household. I too am a big proponent of wanting to support the hybrid model, but also recognize that the online learning option is valuable for those families who might not just be afforded the opportunity or privilege, as I heard mentioned in the public comment, but there are other reasons why people are choosing the online for their families. And I want to just point that out, that is an admirable position that we're able to put families in if they need to do that to keep their family safe or whatever that reason is. So I'm really grateful that we're able to come to you tonight to do that. But to answer your question about the accountability piece as well, sorry, my dog wants to play with the phone, is that we also have asked all of our leadership to take part in all of the professional development with Canvas, that they also are building their own courses for there to be a platform in which our families and students and community can engage with also. I think it's important that they're learners in this, so they'll know how to support their staff in this situation. They'll know what to expect because we're expecting that of them. So, and many of us are also doing the exact same thing. We have to be learners in this transition of this time, and it's a really powerful tool that we'll have. So there's many layers to that, and I look forward to how our teachers will be supported through this transition.
Thank you. Is there, you heard this in one of the public comments, and it's not a new concern. Are there any additional plans to increase internet access for certain families? Or not just internet access, but internet and device, I guess? Maybe everybody has devices, I don't know.
So that's something we're continuing to review and have conversations around. We're looking at obtaining additional devices for new and incoming students, but we know going into this new school year, we will have a new intake of students as well as some staff members that may need additional assistance with that. So those are conversations and things that we're planning for as well.
Would Dr. Reynosa, would principals be aware of which families do not have access? I'm speaking, there was a comment from Washington, but I think it applies more broadly to certain areas.
Definitely. Well, one of the immediate reactions that we had was really being sure that our principals and identified staff were all hands on deck. We not only kept track of that on a daily basis, we were able to monitor which schools were in a position that still needed our assistance. Dr. Blanco and Chief Jamal worked hand in hand in making sure that we were able to purchase that. Chief Jamal also was able to use that document to create that curbside hub. So there was immediate access for families. We even turned it around so that when the principals weren't able to be on campus and not able to provide that kind of hands-on delivery, if you will, his team was able to take over. But nonetheless, our principals were doing everything they could and have kept a really watchful eye. And, you know, their hands were in a position to do as much as they possibly could. Chief Jamal created a lot of pathways for us to be able to turn in work orders, and they were incredibly responsive. And so we saw the numbers, decrease significantly on a daily basis.
The numbers
of just people who needed access, whether it was a new device or they were needing troubleshooting, or can I exchange out my my charger, or my hotspot's not working, what do I do? I mean, there was a multitude of things that were going on that we were able to track daily.
So am I hearing, Dr. McDonald, is it a global measurement, like when we do Canvas and we do engagement monitoring, we will measure that somehow? Like, how many students are not plugged in? This is what I heard, is that we would have a better measurement with Kansas, yeah, with Canvas.
Yeah, I do believe so. I think it gives us the opportunity to better measure student engagement and, of course, gauge the interactions between teachers and students.
And that would be a way to target additional outreach or resources,
Yes.
because some of our colleagues who aren't on the call would ask you what was done, right? What was
Right.
done for this
Well-
family? What was, yeah.
Well, during the spring, when we went to a remote environment and we were using Power School as our learning management system, we were able to determine the number of students that weren't logging on.
Mm.
We use that as a proxy for attendance and participation. And we were able to utilize, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Blanco, we were able to use chasers from LearningWorks to visit some of the families. But certainly we made an effort to reach out to these families to try to determine why the students weren't logging on. So we were tracking that. I think Canvas will give us the opportunity to dial in a little bit more.
So you have a baseline, is what you would say.
Yes,
You have a baseline measurement from the spring,
we do.
or baseline. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Indulging me, I just have a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
Dr. McDonald, there was a question that I believe you're aware of, or certainly a member of your staff is aware of. The question from the public was, what have you done to engage with community? I guess it means partners around childcare. And so I don't know how if you want to have somebody else answer that.
I can answer it.
And Dr. McDonald, also, if you need me to, I'm on.
Go ahead, Dr. Miller. I can chime in after.
Sure. So I can share that we have met with directors, both here in Pasadena, Altadena, and Eagle Rock and South Pasadena. And under the guidance of Reed Hudson, we are looking at developing a matrix, which will begin to show where are the holes in terms of where are needs for our elementary, preschool and elementary students in terms of childcare during the regular day. In addition to reaching out to this group, also Maria Tolliver is leading a group that is
Maria
reaching out to
Tolliver, for the public, Maria Tolliver is
our director of our Learns program.
okay.
Yep, got it. Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Uh-huh.
And Maria Tolliver is heading up a meeting of some of our partners, and that includes the city and the Boys and Girls Club, and also how they can assist in picking up some of our students if parents need additional coverage. And then also, I know that Dr. Blanco is working with Reed Hudson and looking at a structure. If we were to provide childcare ourselves, what would that look like? And then what would the additional cost be for that program? So there are different tiers that are going on at the same time.
Thank you. Real quickly, I think that the question about money, I don't believe Dr. Barnes is on the call. I didn't see her on the list. I hope she's doing okay. But Dr. McDonald, is the answer to the question, because in the board report it says $3.2 million is an estimate. At the end of the board report, I believe it says, here, I'll read it. It says, approximate cost for technology, digital instructional content, student support, and professional development is $3.2 million. Of course, the questions that we got were about how to pay for that, but I believe the answer is there is funding. I'm not sure if it's all under the CARES Act or what, flowing to the state. What would be the answer? Is there a...
Yeah, there is funding. I think there is actually a $15 million set aside.
Okay. So there is funding. I wanted to tell the public that. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, there is funding.
Okay. For our needs.
Although to be clear,
Yeah.
the total level of funding that we will receive in this fiscal year will be less than what we received last school year, given the fact that we're not receiving the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, which is, I think it's estimated to be $5 to $7 million. So, but nonetheless, there is funds. There's a set aside for.
So there's is that true? There's funds for this, for learning loss and for opening, maybe?
Correct, yes.
Because there could be another bill passed, as we know. Mr. Galen probably is following that. Could be another bill passed by the end of the month or so at the federal level. But that you're saying that's separate from the workload budget base kind of thing.
Yes.
That we're getting a hit on. Yeah.
Right.
My last question, I don't know if it's Dr. or Mr. Villegas. Marco?
Doctor.
Doctor. I don't know if he's still there.
I am. I'm still here, yes.
So I'm curious about how, just some general principles or general approaches as to how you serve students with special needs in this environment. Just sort of a broad question, and you have to cram all that into like 10 seconds. No, I'm kidding, but go ahead.
One of the things that we were fortunate in SPED is having the opportunity to do the ESY, and during the ESY time.
That is extended summer school?
Yes, extended summer school, extended year program for the special education students. And so in that, there was use of Canvas, and it showed with the students. So we feel much better, more equipped with students with special needs. Also, looking at joining that weren't able to actually.
I think I'm sorry.
Hey, Steve, can you mute your mic, Steve?
Steve, you got feedback.
Dr. Miller.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and I was just adding, additionally, the use of our instructional aids that we weren't able to access during the spring to help them be part of the equation of helping engage students by getting technology for them and giving them the training that they need in order to support instruction as well on the online basis. So I think when I'm speaking with the department, they're very confident that with the time that they had with the extended session for the summer, we were able to learn a few things that are really going to help in the implementation of this fall's program, along with Canvas. Also, we're looking at other options, what other local entities are doing as well, and trying to get the best ideas to make sure that we meet the needs. One of the things that we're doing also is we're serving our community, serving the special ed community, the survey that's going out, that's going to identify some feedback, and we're going to really take that feedback to help identify how we can better support the instructional program. And so one of the questions that we'll be asking is, what could we do to better support our students and the parents that are helping with the instruction?
Thank you. I withdraw, Mr. Kaelen.
All righty. Ms. Bailey, did you have questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, I do. I just want to know, thank you guys, first of all, for all of your work. This is really good work. But I have a couple of questions that have also come to me. How are we supporting the homeless students? Am I, you guys there?
I was waiting to see if Dr. Miller wanted to respond, since he works with Eric through that program. So I know that Dr. Sakian has been working with the staff in that department, reaching out to the families, working with Collaborate Pasadena, and giving extra attention and support, in terms of family, medical and food and supply needs. In terms of education, we have been serving them through the same ways that we've been serving the other students. So they have, some of the students have required in families a lot more support. So we've really been working closely with the community to address the other additional supports.
So is there a meeting place where they go because they're homeless? I mean, what facility are they using to meet in?
Well, the definition of homelessness is pretty broad. In some cases, it could be families that are sleeping on somebody else's couch or whatever the case may be. So, what we're doing right now is we're working very closely with our community partners to try to figure out what the needs of these families are. For example, Pactel, is a partner that we work with very closely, and they have they're very attuned to what's going on in the community with especially this group of students. And then of course our Families in Transitions office, they case manage a lot of the families with need, especially the homeless families. So so they're providing as much support as they can. Dr. Miller and Dr. Sahakian, I think, are better able to provide more, additional details on what we would be doing to further support our homeless families.
Okay.
Just to add to that,
Dr.
remote
Miller-
education. I would say, just to add to that, I know we've worked closely with Eric and his team, as well as they've identified students that needed additional supports with internet access or other technology needs. We've definitely added them to our priority list to get things distributed to them, and then have also given them services directly through our curbside support, as well, to support any issues or problems that they may have been occurring as far as access.
Looks like Dr. Miller joined. Am I right? I don't know if he heard the question. Dr. Miller?
Again.
Ms. Bailey, what we can do is we can ask Dr. Sahakian to provide you with a more detailed answer to your question.
Yeah, it's coming from the community. I mean, the community is interested in, I know, the planning and everything that goes into it, but the best made plan can change, at the blink of an eye. So I understand that, but they still want to know that everyone is included, and we need to make sure of that as well. So when you presented your plan, you did a great job laying everything out, but there were some things that I guess you didn't, either this wasn't the time, you thought not to go into more detail with specifics on, how we support homeless students and the students that are in foster care, things like what is going to be the turnaround for complaints with technology, what those expectations are, when is the community or the families going to get information on those types of planning and learning how to deal with it. Also, with the kinder parents, I saw that they were on the plan, but how are the parents going to know how to support their kindergartner, and when will they find that out if they're on the distance learning master plan there? And then there's the scheduling. What does the scheduling look like? Are all grades going to be online at the same time? Is there a breakdown of how you're doing middle school versus high school and elementary? So just those kind of things, I believe the community wants to know those types of plans. And then what the set curriculum and what that
Ms.
is
Bailey?
like per grade. Yes.
I apologize. My technology tonight. Now I can sympathize when folks share their technology woes. I apologize. But I did want to share with you that the Family in Transition has been tracking our homeless and actually making individual phone calls we began doing that to ensure, number one, that they were aware of and were accessing our food serving mobile units. In addition to that, we are tracking our homeless around attendance, and then looking at ways we can use some of service interventions. Much of the same work is being done for our foster youth and tracking our foster youth. And one of the things we'll be talking about in an upcoming meeting is going to be how to identify those students that we lost over the last 3 months of school, and of those, who were the foster youth and who were the homeless, and then what are the things we need to do to catch them up. So I did want to assure you that there is work going on with our homeless and our foster youth.
Okay, thank you. And then my last and final question, I think, is regarding the students that are struggling. How are we going to get the extra supports to them that they need, especially because the expectation is that they're going to fall further behind in this environment. So how are we going to support them? And what's the plan for that?
So we have interventions that are built into much of the curriculum that we use. And as we were going back and looking at the request from the board to add a longer day, one of the areas that we looked at, if we could still only offer the 3 classes and have students be successful and not have to have so many classes online at the same time, we could extend the day and have a period that could be used for interventions. You know, that was one way we were looking at it in the secondary. And then in the elementary, you know, also working with Learns and the community partners that would have students after school to be making sure, or childcare. We're looking at learning pods and childcare, and we're going to have someone come and explain to us how that might work, how another nearby district has designed that. So it's not a lack of materials that we have and resources, because we do have the materials and resources to provide interventions. It's fitting them into the school day and, you know, making sure that people who support students outside of the school day have access to the resources and training. So there's going to be, we know, some, you know, summer slippage, which happens every year that teachers are used to working on, but then there's going to be some curriculum that was not addressed due to the situation. And Helen and her team, which I see Helen coming back on, can talk about this a little probably more clearly than I'm saying it, and what they've done in order to address standards that students need.
Before Helen speaks up, will the instructional aids be used at all as part of the intervention that will happen for students?
Hold
Yeah.
on, Michelle. Steve, you got to mute your phone. You're getting cross-talk again. And Dr. Blanco, you're cross-talking too.
Okay, so we are planning to make sure that the aides are equipped with technology. We discussed that in ELT today, so that they can provide support. And I know that Dr. Miller has been in conversations with CSEA, and that they are really willing to have people maybe work out a class per se and do some extra or additional things that they might not have done in their job description to support students. So the answer to that is yes. So I'll let Mrs. Hill speak now about some of the interventions and ways that we're going to look at catch up.
Sure. I really appreciate these questions, Ms. Bailey, because that's actually the heart of what we're most worried about. With all of the changes, the students who had the most significant amount of unfinished learning are those that we are really eager to, as the word is, diagnose in assessment, and make sure that we have a customized solution for them. So there's 2 things that I kind of wanted to speak to here that and again, I have to say that none of these things are perfect magic bullets that will resolve everything for everyone. But there are things that we're wanting to put in place so that teachers are able to better support the students. And a lot of this still has to do with instruction. And so, so the first is several of you have heard me talk a little bit about the model of acceleration of learning versus remediation. So we are working with the new teacher project pretty heavily. Actually the CIPD and EdTech team is meeting right now. They meet with this group every other week, where our next step is actually to look at the scope and sequence pacing guides, look at the curricular guides being provided by each of our content areas, and then realigning them and really pulling out those key concepts so that we can deliver that to teachers. So they don't have to do that thinking, but well, I mean, teachers will always think, but they don't have to do that heavy lift because they need to design the instruction. So that model really focuses on the fact that we want to aspire to a certain outcome of learning for students as opposed to fix gaps that may have happened. When you aspire, the gaps get fixed along the way because you have a next step going. And so, I could go into a lot of the detail, and I'm more than happy to have that conversation and show you some of the documents as well. But those are the roadmaps that we are going to provide so that we can make it a clearer pathway for any of that remediation. The other aspect is diagnosing and progress monitoring. So I have great appreciation for leadership who has been supportive of our requests to really look at assessment this year with a focus on use for instruction as opposed to maybe use for compliance or other things. Now, obviously, we know that there are state requirements that we'll be obligated to, et cetera. But for now, what we have been reviewing is our assessment calendar being really minimized to allow teachers and students the time to get into assessment situations where they can really demonstrate where they are now. An example would be, we actually met this afternoon with Curriculum Associates. They are our vendor for K-8 math. And they have a diagnostic that our teachers and students are familiar with called iReady. We talked about a modification of the window so that we can get and how to do that faithfully online. And then even the communication and training with families. They had a huge parent piece that we discussed with them around why it is so important that we get an accurate reading on where the kids are, because it will then drive the next instructional step. And so really, we know that we're stepping into a school year where we may have an even wider difference in student learning and knowledge. So it's really critical. Teachers are practitioners in understanding where a student is and where they need to take them next. But we really need to know where they are when they come in. So those are the two things that we've been working on.
Okay, thank you. That was it, Pat.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Mr. Torres, you're up next.
First, thank you for this. You know, this is a difficult scenario. And we're asking our workforce to essentially, you know, in the spring, we turned around on a dime and as best we could created learning environments that we thought would be impactful for children. And I think it's been pointed out at previous meetings, we now have time to be able to plan for some of this, but the uncertainty of things is actually, I think, having to plan for two completely different scenarios, which, you know, just being a regular classroom teacher is hard enough, right? But trying to do, you know, both of these and be able to maneuver through them is asking a lot of our, you know, executive leadership team, of our faculty, of our staff. And so I want to begin by thanking you for your hard and thoughtful work in trying to get us to August, I guess. I think so. So I have a couple sort of general questions and some thoughts I wanted to bring out. What so Helen, you had talked about a number of online programs that we would be looking at in the fall, and some would be sort of semester-long courses, and some would be put in place if and when we can return to face-to-face instruction. Can you tell me what is the programs that we're looking at for the online, the semester-long online courses, and how are we going to support those students?
Sure. So it actually is a program that isn't broken down by semester, or there's no end date. It's essentially our scope and sequences are laid out by units. And the units do run a certain number of weeks, depending on what the topic is. And those are still going to be the units that essentially every teacher, whether you're in an online setting, online model or hybrid model, would be governing their planning. The instructional resources that we're providing, we still have all of the district core adoptions with the added social studies for K-5 that's new for this year. So that means the STEM scopes is still available. The iReady and Ready Classroom for Math is still available. Carnegie Learning for the high school. And all of that is still being utilized. The units of study and balanced literacy. These are all incorporated resources. What we're receiving from this program that I mentioned in this presentation, that is the activities and lessons that are native to an online teaching environment, is something that's been created by ASU, Arizona State University, Prep Digital. I don't want to provide all the details until it's been confirmed and approved, but it's definitely something that you can seek more information on from Dr. Blanco and Chief Jamal. But essentially, they have been operating in an online school environment for 612 for a number of years, and they have been piloting K-5. We did receive initially a presentation at a LACO meeting about the sort of offerings that they had. And what really appealed to us about this program is that, unlike some of the other commonly known online systems that we know about, like Acellus or Apex or Alex or other things like that, although Alex is incorporated in this for math, what we saw was a holistic look at what a lesson design is. So like that full project-based, here's the activity, here's a reading selection or primary source or whatever goes with it, depending on the subject. Not just here's the task, assignment complete, assignment complete, assignment complete. So we wanted it to be something that was interactive, that still allowed the teacher to have instructional jurisdiction and to have the student have interaction versus just getting on and completing tasks and then sort of having a checklist of assignments be the marker of what they accomplished this year. So we can definitely give you more detail on that if it becomes approved, but that is what we are looking at for online content.
Okay. And so we will have staff assigned to those students to monitor progress as well, I'm assuming.
I believe this is something that Dr. Miller would be able to speak to, because I think staffing for either program will, have to take into account HR and UTP considerations. So I don't know if Dr. Miller's still online.
And I may be
Yes,
afraid he is online because he goes in and out on his.
Yes, I do apologize. I think you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay. Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. So once we've identified what the program is, then we will be looking at working with academics to identify what classes will be offered and then what appropriate credential, and then we'll be filling those positions primarily from our current ranks, and then backwards map that to our remote learning positions, and then trying to fill all the positions, but at the same time trying to be conservative with our FTE.
Okay. Yeah, and just Steve or Dr. Miller, just as I'm sure you're aware, if it's a sort of that sort of independent study model that you're looking at, that they will be virtual learners through the semester, the credentialing requirements are not in place. You need a credential, but you don't need a specific credential for K-12.
Yes, for the independent study model, that credential is not a requirement. For a remote and/or online program that's providing credits for a core class, then the credential would apply.
Okay. All right. We can have a further conversation on that. All right. So another question I have, this came up when we were talking about students, and I think Ms. Bailey brought this up about new kindergartners or new students to our district. I'm going to encourage you to think about, staff to think about having a sort of town hall perhaps with school communities for supporting your child on a distance learning platform. And I'm going to encourage you also to reach out to our group homes and have their staff log in as well. Because we're going to be asking, this will be perhaps more permanent. I mean, I'm thinking, this may last as long as first semester. So I think that we want to provide as much information for caregivers on how to support the children that they come into contact with every day. So, and I don't know if you've done that or planned that, but I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to have, some monthly check-ins with various school site families to be able to sort of continue helping parents and caregivers support the children that they're working with.
So, Mr. Turris, we
yes.
did have a conversation this morning in ELT about how family engagement can work with our community liaisons and how we could design some trainings for parents, exactly what you're talking about, and just have a more active role with using employees that we might not have had time to plan for. And one of the